How can one night at a club destroy an engagement that seemed unbreakable? Why did a playful moment on the dance floor turn into quiet planning, recorded steps, and a lawful end in public? Can love survive when one person dances for attention and the other answers with evidence? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I'm Evadne Rellin, and if I'm being honest, I never thought one song on a crowded dance floor would ruin everything. People keep saying I should have known better, that letting a stranger hold my waist while my fiancé watched was asking for trouble. But in that moment, it didn't feel wrong. It felt fun, light, free, like I was reminding everyone, including Gavin, that I still mattered. The lights were flashing, music pulsing, people cheering. I thought it was harmless. He thought it was humiliation. The next morning, he didn't yell. He didn't even ask why. He just started organizing things, bills, folders, schedules. I told myself he was being dramatic, that he'd cool off and realize it was nothing. But something in the quiet way he moved scared me more than shouting ever could. He wasn't angry. He was calm. Too calm. And calm means thinking. Now the photos everywhere, tagged and shared by people who think they know what happened. They don't see the part after. The silence, the separate mugs, the calendar alerts I pretended not to notice. Maybe it really was just dancing. Or maybe it was the moment Gavin decided to stop playing my game. I'm not going to lie. I liked the way people looked at me that night. The club lights hit just right, soft pink sliding over the crowd like warm water. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like somebody's fiancé. I felt like me again. Gavin was there, standing near the bar in his dark shirt, holding his drink like it was something fragile. He doesn't dance, never has, and that's always been part of our joke. He watches, I shine. At least that's how I like to tell it. Rafa was the one who pulled me out. We'd met through a friend at a work event. He handled promotions for the downtown venues. He always knew the DJs, the tables, the cameras. That night, he was all smiles and energy, spinning girls around and making everyone laugh. When he grabbed my hand, I didn't think twice. It wasn't like we were doing anything wild, just moving, laughing, blending into the rhythm. But then his hand settled on my waist, firm and steady, and something inside me thrilled at how easy it felt to be noticed again. I caught Gavin's eyes from across the floor. He didn't move, didn't frown, just watched. I thought he'd roll his eyes, maybe shake his head, but he just stood there. That calmness made me push further. I leaned into the music, turned slightly so Rafa's arm slipped around me. It felt like a test, one Gavin was failing because he refused to react. I told myself he should fight for me, show he still cared. Instead, he stayed still, the same unreadable look on his face. When the song ended, Rafa grinned and said something about how I had the energy of the night. I laughed too loudly and brushed his arm away, pretending it meant nothing. The cameras flashed from someone's phone, maybe more than one. I thought it would make a funny story later, something to tease Gavin with. When I went back to him, he was finishing his drink, his hand resting against the glass like he was counting seconds. He asked if I was done. I told him to relax, that it was just dancing. He said nothing. That silence was heavy, but I refused to let it stick. I said he was being ridiculous, that everyone was dancing, that he needed to stop acting like my father. His mouth twitched, maybe the start of a smile, but it wasn't one of the warm ones. It was tight, quiet. I reached for his arm. He stepped back slightly, just enough for me to notice. We left early. The air outside was thick with the smell of food trucks and smoke from the nearby street stalls. I tried to talk about how fun it was, how everyone had missed nights like this. He just nodded, unlocked the car, and said, "Ready?" I laughed, said he was acting jealous. He didn't argue. That was worse than anger. At least anger meant you mattered. On the ride home, I posted a short clip from the dance floor. Rafa spinning me under the lights, me laughing with my head thrown back. The caption said, "Finally letting loose." It got a few likes before we even reached the apartment. I turned the screen toward him, said it was cute. He didn't look. He just turned into our street and parked quietly. Inside, he went straight to the kitchen. I kicked off my shoes, humming from the music still buzzing in my ears. The apartment felt colder than usual. I watched him rinse his glass, dry it carefully, and set it on the counter far from mine. 2 mugs, 2 sides. He said he was going to bed. I told him he was overreacting, that it was just dancing, that if he couldn't handle a simple night out, maybe he should stay home next time. He said, "Maybe." Then he disappeared into the hallway. I scrolled through the comments before brushing my teeth. People said I looked confident, radiant. Someone tagged Rafa with a fire emoji. It made me laugh. Gavin was probably already asleep. I told myself he'd get over it. Men always do. But when I slid into bed, his side was smooth, untouched. The clock blinked past midnight, and I realized I hadn't heard him moving in hours. I checked my phone again. No messages, no unread notifications from him. Just another like on the video. In the morning, the smell of coffee woke me. The kitchen light was already on. Gavin was dressed, tie knotted neatly, his phone face down beside the cup he'd washed again. I asked if he was still mad. He said he wasn't. I didn't believe him. He finished his coffee, checked his watch, and walked out without saying goodbye. After he left, I noticed his planner open on the table. He's not usually the type to write things down, but there it was, a small neat line, downtown 9:25. I assumed it was some work thing. Still, I felt that little pull in my stomach, the kind that says you've missed something small but important. The apartment felt too quiet. I opened my phone again, scrolled through the video. Rafa had shared it on his story with the caption "Energy Queen." I smiled, screenshot it, and sent it to Dina with a laugh. She replied instantly, "You're glowing, sweetie. Don't let him dull you." That's what she always said. Men want to own the light they fell in love with. I told myself she was right. Gavin would calm down, see that it was nothing. He'd probably even laugh about it later. To make peace, I left a text. Lunch later. My treat. No reply. At work, people were talking about the clip. My coworker Lila leaned over my desk, saying she'd never have the nerve to post something like that with a fiancé watching. I said confidence was what keeps relationships exciting. She gave me that polite office smile, the one that hides judgment. I brushed it off. By lunch, the post had doubled in likes. Someone tagged Gavin, which annoyed me. He'd probably see it now and think I'd done it to embarrass him. I considered deleting it, but that felt like surrender. Instead, I changed the caption to "Strong Women Dance, Weak Men Sulk." It sounded clever at the time. That evening, Gavin came home on time. He walked in, set his briefcase down, and started cooking. I leaned against the counter, trying to make a joke about the new caption. He didn't respond, just chopped vegetables, washed his hands, checked something on his phone. I saw the screen light up with another note app. Lines, bullet points, dates. "Are you keeping a diary now?" I teased. "Something like that," he said. When we sat to eat, I tried to talk about the weekend. He nodded at all the right moments, but didn't say much. The quiet stretched until I finally said, "You're really going to hold a grudge over dancing?" He looked at me then. His voice was calm, low. "You keep calling it dancing because it sounds smaller that way." I told him he was twisting things, that I'd never done anything wrong, that maybe he should ask himself why he feels threatened by harmless fun. He didn't answer, just finished his meal and took his plate to the sink. I watched him dry it, place it neatly next to the others, and walk into the study. When I peeked in later, he was typing on his laptop, headphones on, expression steady. I asked what he was working on. He said, "Just organizing." Organizing what? Everything. I laughed, said he sounded like an accountant even off the clock. He smiled slightly and said, "It helps me think." That night I couldn't sleep. I told myself it was just tension, that couples fight. Still, I kept picturing his face at the club. How calm he'd been. How still. Most men would have made a scene, shouted, dragged me off the floor. He hadn't done any of that. He'd just watched. When I finally drifted off, I dreamed of lights and cameras, of Rafa's hand on my waist, and Gavin's quiet eyes somewhere in the dark. I woke to the faint hum of a printer coming from the study. It stopped after a moment, followed by the click of a drawer closing. I almost called out, but something told me not to. Instead, I turned over and told myself he was probably printing work stuff. Probably. By morning, the only sound left was the coffee maker sputtering. 2 mugs again, his clean, mine, half full and cold. By the end of that week, the video had taken on a life of its own. I didn't even need to open my phone anymore. People at work were doing it for me. Every time I walked past the break area, someone would whisper about that clip. Lila said I looked confident. Mark from accounting called it bold. The new intern, barely 22, asked if Gavin was okay with it in this awkward tone that made me want to throw my coffee at him. I told them all it was harmless fun, that my fiancé was secure enough not to care. I said it like I was proud of that, like we were one of those modern couples who didn't get hung up on jealousy. Inside, though, something about the way everyone asked kept scratching at me. At lunch, I posted another photo from that night, a still frame where Rafa's hand was clearly on my waist, my head thrown back laughing. I captioned it, "When you're in your element." Within an hour, it had over 200 likes. Comments poured in from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Queen energy. He should be proud to have you. Some men can't handle confidence. I replied to a few, hearted the rest, trying to ignore the single message at the top of my screen. Gavin, typing. Then gone. When I got home that night, the apartment felt too clean. The living room rug was vacuumed, the dishes done, and the faint scent of lemon cleaner hung in the air. Gavin was at the table, laptop open, eyes focused on a spreadsheet. I asked what he was working on. He said, "Just numbers." I peeked over his shoulder, expecting to see something from work, but the tabs didn't look familiar. One was labeled utilities, another joint expenses. There were dates, columns, totals. He noticed me looking and closed the screen softly. "Organizing again?" I said. "It helps me keep track of things," he replied. "What things?" "Life things." The calmness in his voice made me feel small. I tried to lighten the mood, told him he should help me manage my social media since he was suddenly such an organizer. He didn't even smile. Just said, "You already manage your image well enough." That stung more than I expected. I snapped back, asking why he had to make everything sound like a lecture. He said he wasn't. I accused him of acting cold. He said I liked warmth only when it came with praise. It went quiet after that. I heard the printer start up again from the corner of the room. A single blank sheet came out. He took it, folded it, and slid it into a drawer. The sound of the lock clicking was louder than any argument. The next morning, I woke up to find him already gone. On the counter sat 2 mugs again, his spotless, mine half finished. Next to them was a sticky note. "Don't forget rent due 5th. Simple, polite, detached." I crumpled it, tossed it in the trash. At work, I kept checking my phone for a message that never came. My coworker Becca walked by my desk and asked if Gavin was the quiet type. I said he just needed space. She said, "Space looks different when it comes with silence." I laughed it off, but her words followed me all afternoon. Around 5, I saw that Rafa had tagged me in another story. A close-up of our faces on the dance floor, glitter in the air, his hand resting just slightly lower than I remembered. The caption said, Best vibes with the best energy. My stomach twisted, but deleting it felt too dramatic. Instead, I commented a flame emoji and went home early, convincing myself that acting unbothered would make me right. Gavin was home, sitting on the couch with a folder open beside him. I dropped my purse, kicked off my heels, and asked if he wanted takeout. He said he'd already eaten. I told him he could have at least waited. He said, "You were busy." "Busy?" "With your new audience," he said. I told him he was overreacting, that it was one night and he was acting like I'd cheated. He looked up from the folder and said, "You keep bringing up cheating." "I never said that." That threw me off. I didn't know what to say. I asked if he was trying to make me feel guilty for having fun. He said, "I'm just writing things down." He got up, walked into the study, and shut the door. I stood there staring at the faint light under it. My first instinct was to follow, demand he talk to me, but I didn't. I told myself I wouldn't chase someone who wanted to sulk. Later, I peeked into the study while he was in the shower. The desk was perfectly organized. Folders labeled Household, Archive A, Archive B. A USB stick sat on top of one, labeled by date. I picked it up, turned it in my hand, and for some reason, it made me nervous. When I heard the water stop, I slid it back and closed the drawer. That night, I called my mother. I told her Gavin was being distant, that he was acting strange. She laughed and said, "He's probably intimidated. Some men can't handle confident women." I told her maybe he was just tired of me. She said, "No, he's tired of losing control. Don't let him guilt you." Her words made me feel justified again. I posted another picture, this time of me at my desk with a fake smile, captioned, "Strong women don't apologize for being seen." It got more likes than the first one. I went to bed satisfied, certain that public approval meant I was winning. In the morning, Gavin was in the kitchen reading something on his phone. I asked what it was. He said, "Just checking delivery updates." When he left for work, I noticed a new label appear on the fridge calendar. Paper drop, 3 p.m. I asked what it meant. He said, "Just errands." That afternoon, I couldn't focus. My co-workers were whispering about the video again. Lila said her boyfriend had seen it and called it cringe. I laughed too loudly, said some people were just jealous. Inside, though, I felt this slow burn of embarrassment. When I got home, Gavin was at the dining table again, laptop open, the faint blue light reflecting off his face. He didn't even glance up. I said I'd made dinner. He said he'd eaten. Same answer. I asked if he wanted to talk. He said, "About what?" I blurted out that I felt like he was judging me. He said, "No, I'm recording." "Recording what?" "Facts," he said. "They're easier to remember than feelings." I told him he was being creepy, asked if he was spying on me now. He said he didn't need to spy when I posted everything myself. I slammed my plate down, told him he was turning into a stranger. He looked up finally and said, "You already danced with one." The words hung there, heavier than the silence after. I stormed out to the balcony, shaking with anger. Through the glass door, I could see him typing again, his face calm, almost peaceful. I stayed outside until it got cold. The city lights blurred beneath me. All those people laughing, moving, living without worrying about who was watching. I told myself that's what I wanted, to be free, unbothered. But when I came back in, Gavin was gone again. The next morning, the pattern repeated. Coffee smell, 2 mugs, 1 clean, 1 not. His car was already out of the driveway. I noticed the faint scent of toner in the air and a small red light blinking on the printer. A new document sat face down on the tray. I turned it over. Blank, just like the last one. I laughed under my breath, tossed it in the trash and told myself it was nothing. But for some reason, my hands wouldn't stop shaking when I checked the calendar again and saw another new reminder, written neatly in his handwriting. Downtown 11:20. When I texted him asking if he was meeting someone, he replied only, "Work stuff. Don't worry about it." I didn't, at least not out loud. I just sat there in the quiet kitchen, scrolling through my notifications, pretending the stillness around me was peace instead of warning. The restaurant was already loud when we arrived, but somehow the noise still couldn't cover the tension between us. Gavin had suggested dinner with his parents and my sister, said it would be good to touch base. The way he said it, so formal, made it sound like a business meeting, not family time. I told myself he was trying. I put on a short red dress I knew would photograph well, under warm light, and practiced smiling in the mirror before we left. His parents were already seated when we walked in. Tom gave Gavin a nod, then stood to hug me. He's the kind of man who always smells like aftershave and old books. His wife, Ellen, smiled tightly, eyes flicking from Gavin to me, like she could sense the unspoken air between us. My sister Maya was late, of course. She texted parking, "Don't start without me." I wished she wouldn't come at all. We ordered drinks first. Gavin asked for water, I asked for wine, and when the server poured it, I held the glass a little too high, letting the deep red catch the light. It felt like armor. Tom started with polite conversation. "How's work? How's the apartment?" Gavin answered with careful, neutral phrases. I filled the silences, telling stories about my office, how my boss had shared my post from the club, called it modern confidence. Ellen shifted slightly in her seat. Gavin didn't say a word. Tom cleared his throat. "Saw something online, actually," he said. "That was quite the photo." I smiled. "Oh, that? Just a night out." Ellen folded her napkin neatly. "Looked like quite a night." "It's 2025, I said lightly. "People dance, it's not a scandal." Gavin set down his fork, slow and deliberate. "No one said it was a scandal." "Your silence says plenty," I said, maybe louder than I should have. Tom's brows drew together. "Kids, maybe—" "No, it's fine," I interrupted. "We're adults. We can talk." Gavin's tone stayed even. "You don't talk, Eva. You perform." I laughed, sharp. "That's rich, coming from the man who writes everything down like we're an experiment." Ellen looked away, pretending to check the menu again. Tom sighed. "Maybe let's just eat first." Then Maya walked in, right on cue, bringing a gust of cold air and the energy of someone who knew she was walking into a storm. She hugged Ellen, kissed my cheek and whispered, "Please behave." We ordered. Food came. The clinking of silverware became our only conversation. I could feel Gavin's calm like a wall. I hated it. I wanted him to crack, to show something human, but he just sat there, polite, unreadable. Finally, I said, "You know what's funny? If the roles were reversed, if I stood still while some woman held you on a dance floor, everyone would call me controlling." Tom murmured, "Eva." "No, it's true," I went on. "People love to see confident women get punished for being visible." Gavin's eyes lifted. "You call it confidence. I call it cruelty." That one landed. The table went quiet again. I stared at him, pulse thudding. Cruelty is pretending you're fine just so you can play the victim later. He didn't answer. He just reached for his glass, drank slowly, and said, "Maybe." It infuriated me. The restraint, the distance, the way his calm made me look hysterical. I turned to Tom and Ellen, laughing too brightly. "See what I deal with? He's allergic to emotion." Ellen's voice was soft but clear. "He's allergic to being humiliated." For a second I couldn't breathe. "Excuse me." Tom placed his hand over hers. "Let's not do this here." But it was too late. I felt heat rushing up my neck. "So that's what he told you? That I humiliated him? For dancing?" No one replied. The silence was thicker than the noise around us. Then Maya's phone buzzed, mercifully breaking it. She looked at me with that pitying expression I've always hated. "Ava, maybe stop digging." I stood up too quickly. "I'm not the problem here. Everyone's acting like I committed a crime for having fun." Gavin stayed seated. His eyes met mine. You did commit something, just not the kind of thing courts punish. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. I sat back down, partly because I didn't know what to say and partly because I realized people were watching. A few tables over, someone had their phone angled toward us. I couldn't tell if they were filming or just scrolling, but it made my chest tighten anyway. I tried to steer the conversation back to safe ground. I asked Ellen about her garden, Tom about his book club. Gavin didn't help. He just kept checking his phone between bites, the reflection of a spreadsheet glowing faintly on the screen. Dessert came. I didn't eat it. I sipped the rest of my wine and felt my smile cracking at the edges. When the server set down the check, Gavin took it immediately. He slid his card in before anyone could argue. Maya leaned over to whisper, "He's being too calm. You should worry about that." I whispered back, "I'm not scared of calm." But I was. After dinner, everyone walked out together. The night air felt heavy, like the sky was watching. Ellen hugged me, distant but polite. Tom said, "Hope you two get some rest." Gavin thanked them, his tone clipped but civil. Maya stayed back with me as they walked ahead. "You have to stop posting," she said quietly. "Why?" "Because he's not ignoring it, Eva. He's collecting it." I laughed, but it came out brittle. "Collecting what? Screenshots? Let him. I don't care." "Maybe you should," she said. When I got home, Gavin was already in the study. I could hear faint typing, the steady rhythm of someone methodical. I sat in the dark living room, scrolling through my phone. Someone had tagged me in a video from the restaurant, just a few seconds of me standing, gesturing, face flushed. The caption read, "Drama at dinner." I froze. There were comments already. "She's the girl from that club video." "Same woman?" Wild, I wanted to scream. Instead, I took a screenshot and texted it to Gavin. "You see what people are doing to me?" He didn't reply. I heard the faint hum of the printer again. By midnight, I gave up waiting. I brushed my teeth, washed my face, crawled into bed. The other side was cold, as always. Sometime later, the sound of his footsteps came down the hall. The door opened. He stood there in the dark, just a shape against the faint light from the study. "Are you happy now?" I whispered. He said, "No one's happy. Some of us just stopped pretending." I turned away, pulling the blanket up to my chin. He left the door open. I stared at the shadow of the doorway until morning. When I woke, the apartment was silent again. On the counter, next to his clean mug, sat a folded napkin with something written in his tight, tidy handwriting. "Breakfast with Tom, 8:45. Beneath it, faint smudges of toner dust. I stood there, reading it over and over. Then I opened my phone and saw the newest notification. The dinner clip had hit 1,000 views. The comments weren't calling me confident anymore. They were calling me cruel. I told myself I didn't care. I poured my coffee, scrolled past the words "poor guy," and whispered into the quiet kitchen. It was just dancing, but even I didn't believe it anymore. The apartment started to feel like someone else's space. Everything was too neat, too measured. Gavin's things had moved into tidy sections, files stacked by color, drawers that used to stick now sliding perfectly. Even his shoes lined up in a row by the door. I used to tease him about being messy. Now it felt like he'd erased himself into precision. That week, we barely spoke. He left before sunrise, returned after dark, each day exactly the same. Sometimes I'd hear him moving in the guest room, the faint click of his keyboard, or the hum of the printer. The noises became part of the house, steady, unnerving. One night I found him sitting at the kitchen table sorting envelopes. I asked what he was doing. He said, "Just clearing space." I told him he was starting to sound like a machine. He smiled faintly. "Machines are reliable." I rolled my eyes, poured wine, and said, "Reliability isn't love." He didn't argue. He just kept folding, sealing, labeling. There was one marked household, another accounts, another archive A. I reached toward them, joking that he looked like he was planning an escape. He said quietly, "Planning makes things easier." I laughed, but my throat felt tight. "Are we still talking about envelopes?" He said nothing, only slid the last one into the drawer and locked it. That soft click again, like punctuation at the end of a threat he didn't have to voice. I told Maya about it over coffee the next morning. She looked uneasy. "Ava, that doesn't sound like a man who's giving up. It sounds like a man preparing." "Preparing for what? He's not divorcing me over a stupid dance." "You sure?" I told her she was being dramatic. She said she'd seen his new posts, photos of him hiking alone, smiling, calm. "He looks lighter," she said. "That's not good for you." I brushed it off, though the words followed me all day. When I got home that night, the apartment smelled faintly of toner again. A small USB drive sat on top of the printer, labeled with that day's date. I picked it up, turned it over. My name wasn't on it, but the neat handwriting was his. I set it back carefully, pretending it didn't bother me. At dinner, I tried to talk. Told him work was exhausting, that people were gossiping about the restaurant video. He nodded. I asked if he'd seen it. He said, "I see more than you think." I froze. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," he said. "Just a statement." I told him he was being weird, that he should stop making everything sound like evidence. He looked up then, eyes steady. "You said it, not me." That quiet made my skin crawl. I got up, poured more wine, and said, "You think you're so moral, but all this silence is manipulation." He stood too, calmly rinsed his plate, and said, "If silence feels like manipulation, maybe you're used to noise covering guilt." I wanted to slap him for that. Instead, I laughed, sharp and ugly, said he'd make a great lawyer with how careful he'd become. He replied, "Lawyers keep records. I just learn from the best." That line stayed in my head the whole night. Later, lying in bed, I scrolled through my old posts, wondering when everything had started to crack. There were so many pictures of us smiling, so many captions about forever. I almost deleted them all, but couldn't. The comments underneath were too perfect, like proof that we'd been real. When I woke up, Gavin was gone again. A note on the counter read, "Out early. Don't wait up." I noticed something else too, a tiny black key lying next to his mug. It looked like the one for the locked drawer. I picked it up, heart pounding, then hesitated. Curiosity won. Inside the drawer was a clean folder labeled Archive B. Inside that, neat stacks of paper, bank statements, screenshots of my posts, even printed comments. At the back, an envelope with my name on it, sealed. I didn't open it. I shoved everything back exactly as it was, returned the key, and spent the rest of the day pretending I hadn't seen any of it. That evening, I tried a different tactic. I waited for him in the kitchen wearing the dress from that club night. When he walked in, his face didn't change. He hung up his jacket, washed his hands, and said, "You're dressed." "For you," I said. He nodded once. "Okay." I moved closer, let my fingers brush his sleeve. "Don't you miss me?" He said, "Miss what part?" I stared at him. "You're seriously asking that?" He didn't move, didn't flinch. "I'm asking because I don't know which version of you is real." I stepped back. "You're punishing me for something that wasn't even wrong." He sighed softly, almost kindly. "You keep calling it punishment because you can't imagine someone walking away without a fight." That cut deeper than shouting would have. I told him he was cold, heartless, that no real man behaves like this. He said, "Maybe not, maybe that's the point." Then he left for the guest room, the door shutting quietly behind him. I sat on the kitchen floor for a while, wineglass between my knees, watching the light on the printer blink red again. I told myself it was just coincidence, just work stuff. The next morning, Maya texted asking if I was okay. I typed fine and deleted it. She sent another. He called Dad, said he might need advice on proper handling. I didn't know what that meant. Proper handling of what? I wanted to call Gavin right then, but pride stopped me. Instead, I opened my feed and posted a throwback photo of us from 2 years ago, captioned, "Some things don't fade." It looked warm, nostalgic. Within minutes, people commented heart emojis. It felt good again, safe, but later, when I came home, that photo was gone, deleted. I hadn't touched it. My stomach turned. Gavin was in the living room reading. I asked if he'd done it. He said, "You delete things when they stop feeling true. Maybe your phone finally caught up." I demanded his phone, his passwords, proof that he wasn't manipulating me. He just stared and said, "You want transparency now?" That night, I locked myself in the bedroom and cried, not because I missed him, but because I hated how small he was making me feel. Through the door, I heard him pacing, then silence, then a faint rustle of paper sliding under the crack. When I looked, it was another note, "Meet me at the park tomorrow." 6 p.m. The handwriting was perfect, careful. The next evening, I went. The sky was pink, fading into grey. Gavin was already sitting on a bench, dressed in his usual neat way, watching ducks drift along the water. He didn't smile when he saw me. "I didn't know we had appointments now," I said, trying for sarcasm. He said, "Appointments make things clear." I sat beside him. "You can stop pretending you're calm. Just say whatever you're planning." "I'm not pretending," he said. "I've accepted things." I laughed bitterly. "Accepted what? That your fiancé has a life?" He turned to me then, eyes steady. "That she has an audience." I stared at the river instead of him. "You're making this about pride," he said. "No, about privacy." We sat there for a long time, not touching, not looking. When he finally stood, he said, "I'll handle it properly." The word properly sent a chill through me. "Handle what?" I asked. He just shook his head. "You'll see." Then he walked away, leaving me on the bench with the ducks and the fading light, my own reflection rippling in the water, until it broke apart completely. After that meeting at the park, everything moved in slow motion. Gavin came home later and later, sometimes past midnight, always quiet. He didn't slam doors or sigh or even look tired. He just functioned. The more he withdrew, the more I tried to act normal. I started leaving upbeat music playing when he walked in, hoping sound could fill what was breaking. One night I made dinner. Real dinner, not delivery. He sat down, thanked me politely, and ate in silence. I asked if he wanted to talk. He said, "About what?" I told him about the office gossip, how people still whispered about the dance video. He said, "It's old news." I said that wasn't the point. He nodded and kept eating. I wanted to scream. When he finished, he set his fork down and said, "I've decided to handle it properly." I blinked. "Handle what?" "This," he said. "Us." I laughed because the alternative was panic. "What does that even mean? You make it sound like a tax form." He looked at me evenly. "At least tax forms tell the truth when you sign them." That line sat in the air like smoke. I told him he was being dramatic, that couples fight all the time, that maybe he should remember how much I've done for this relationship. He didn't respond. He just got up, rinsed his plate, and said, "I'll be staying at my father's for a while." I followed him down the hall, demanding answers. He stopped at the door, keys in hand, and said, "Don't make this worse than it already is." Then he was gone. I stood there in the quiet, shaking. I texted Maya. "He's leaving. I think he's serious." She replied, "I told you he was planning something." I called my mother next. She said, "Good. Maybe he'll realize what he's losing. Let him cool off. He's not going anywhere." But something in her voice sounded forced, like she didn't fully believe it. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the apartment felt like absence. Around 2 a.m., I went through the study again, opening drawers, scanning folders. The USBs were gone. The drawer was empty except for one small sticky note. Archive moved. I sat on the floor holding that note until the sun came up, By morning, I was furious. I decided I'd drive to his father's and demand he come home. But when I reached for my phone, I saw a message from Tom. Give Gavin space. He's doing things the right way. The right way. What was that supposed to mean? I went anyway. Tom's car was in the driveway, but Gavin's wasn't. Tom opened the door, face calm, voice low. He's busy right now. Busy with what? Sorting everything out, Tom said. He'll contact you when it's appropriate. I laughed in disbelief. Appropriate? He's my fiancé, not my accountant. Tom's expression didn't change. Exactly. That shut me up for a second. I asked if Gavin was angry. Tom said, no, focused. I drove home trembling with a mix of rage and dread. The whole way, I rehearsed things I'd say. How he was ruining us. How one mistake didn't erase years. But part of me already knew I was talking to a wall. The apartment felt smaller when I returned. Half of his clothes were gone. The drawers that used to stick opened easily now, too easily. The closet looked hollow, a line of hangers swaying slightly like they'd just been touched. On the nightstand, his watch and ring sat side by side, deliberate and final. I called his phone, straight to voicemail. I left a message saying he was being childish, that we could fix this, that no one needed to know. My voice cracked on that last part. 2 hours later, I saw he'd opened my message but didn't reply. Instead, a new email arrived. A shared drive invitation titled Household Records. I opened it, heart racing. Inside were folders labeled rent, accounts, shared items, media. Every file dated, sorted, clean. It was like he'd made a museum of our life, and I wasn't invited inside. I slammed the laptop shut, shaking. I called Maya again. He's turning this into some kind of performance. She said, no, Eva, he's turning it into paperwork. I yelled that she was supposed to be on my side. She sighed. I am, but you don't see what's coming. He's protecting himself. The word protecting rang in my ears. I told her Gavin wouldn't go that far. She said, you've made this public, Eva. He's just matching your stage. I hung up. For the next few days, I filled the silence with noise, music, TV, phone calls with people who told me what I wanted to hear. Dina kept saying I should post something bold, remind him what he's losing. So I did. I posted a selfie with the caption unbothered, women are dangerous. It got hundreds of likes in hours. That night, Gavin texted for the first time in days. Meet me tomorrow, 11 a.m. Plaza. No details, no punctuation. I replied, finally ready to talk. He read it, no response. The next morning I dressed carefully, jeans, white blouse, soft makeup. I practiced my lines in the mirror, calm, understanding, maybe a little guilt mixed in. I wanted him to see I was trying. At the plaza, he was already there, sitting by the fountain, reading something on his phone. He didn't look angry, just precise. When he saw me, he stood, polite as ever. You look tired, I said. You look busy, he replied. I forced a smile. So what's this about? You moving back in? He shook his head. No, I wanted to say this face to face. Say what? That I'm done trying to reason with you. I'll let the process handle it now. My stomach turned. What process? He looked at his watch, then back at me. You'll know soon. Gavin, stop talking like a lawyer. He met my eyes. I'm not a lawyer. I'm someone who finally stopped arguing. I stepped closer. You're not ending this over a video. You can't. He exhaled, slow and steady. It's not just a video. It's everything after. You made the world our witness. I'm just letting them see the rest. I grabbed his arm, desperate. Please, just talk to me like before. Yell if you have to. I can take it. He pulled gently free. You always think noise means love. It doesn't. Then what does? Respect, he said simply, and that left the dance floor with him. The word stung so much I couldn't speak. He looked almost sorry then, almost. This isn't revenge, he said. It's correction. What does that mean? You'll see, he said again, the same calm tone that had started to terrify me. You wanted attention, Eva. Now you'll have all of it. He checked his watch again, then stepped back. I have to go. Things are in motion. Gavin, please. He turned, started walking toward the street. The wind lifted the edge of his jacket. He looked lighter, as if the weight had shifted to me completely. I stood there for a long time, shaking. People walked by, some glancing, some ignoring. My phone buzzed. A notification from an unknown number. Document shared with you, more V. Rellin. I froze. I didn't open it. Not yet. I couldn't breathe. When I finally looked up, Gavin was gone. The fountain kept running, steady and endless, like nothing had changed, but everything had. The courthouse lobby was colder than I expected. The air smelled of paper and disinfectant, the kind of place where even footsteps sounded like decisions. I told myself I was only there to talk, to end the confusion. I'd texted Gavin all morning, no answer. He'd read every message, not one reply. So I came to find him. When the elevator opened, he was standing by the reception desk in his grey jacket, calm as always. He looked like someone arriving for an appointment, not a confrontation. I said his name. He turned, nodded politely, and said, "You made it." I tried to smile. "Can we not do this here? It's public." He said, "That's fitting." My throat tightened. "What are you doing?" He gestured slightly to the side. A woman in a dark blazer approached, holding a folder. "Ms. Rellin?" she asked. I nodded, uncertain. She handed me an envelope. "You've been served." For a second, the words didn't land. I thought maybe it was some mix-up, a delivery error. Then I saw my name printed beside his. Petition to terminate joint assets and recover financial damages. My knees nearly gave out. "Are you serious?" I whispered. Gavin's tone stayed gentle. "Completely." People around us slowed to watch. I could feel my face heating, the familiar flash of shame I used to make other people feel. "You couldn't talk to me first?" "I did," he said. "You called it weakness." I tried to hand the papers back, but the woman shook her head. "They're yours now." Someone nearby lifted a phone, filming. My voice cracked. "You're embarrassing yourself." He looked at me, steady and calm. "No, just ending the show." The noise of the lobby seemed to fade. I stared down at the pages in my hands, the clean black letters spelling out what couldn't be undone. He was already walking away, shoulders straight, phone buzzing once in his pocket, before he answered it quietly. The camera light from a bystander caught the shine of the paper as I stood there alone, every eye on me. I wanted to shout, to spin it, to make it sound smaller, but the words wouldn't come. All I could see was his calm face turning one last time before he stepped outside into daylight. And then he was gone, leaving me holding the proof that this time the silence had spoken first.